Hello, welcome. Today we will install a Linux instance in WSL2 on a Windows 10 workstation with bridged networking to give us a dynamic IP address on the local network. The instance will then appear on the LAN just like a physical device, separate from the host, and be addressable from any other device on the network. A typical local area network uses private IP addresses that are never found on the internet, addresses like 172.16 or 192.168, or anything that starts with a 10. These IP addresses are not valid on the internet, so that's why they are most often used for local area networks. The LAN router is a gateway that manages traffic between the LAN and the internet with network address translation. A workstation asks for and receives an IP address from the DHCP server, after which other devices on the LAN can be reached directly and internet traffic is managed by the router. WSL2 runs a Linux guest instance in a lightweight virtual machine on the workstation host. By default, an internal NAT network is created using a Hyper-V virtual switch as the network gateway. The guest gets an IP address on the internal network, and routing to the other LAN devices and the internet is handled on the host. In this configuration, the guest can reach the host and other devices on the LAN as well as the internet, but only the host can see the Linux guest instance. With bridge networking, no internal network is created, and the virtual switch simply passes traffic directly to the LAN. The guest gets its IP address from the DHCP server just like the host, allowing direct access to other LAN devices with internet traffic managed by the router. So let's get started. So the first thing we have to do is install WSL. For that, we need to bring up Windows Features. You can also do this from the command prompt with the DISM command or with PowerShell. We need the virtual machine platform and Windows Subsystem for Linux. And let's go ahead and install those. All right, and now we really do need to restart. So let's do that. Okay, now that we've rebooted, we're going to bring up command shell. We're going to run that as an administrator. First thing we're going to do is update WSL. And that'll take a couple minutes. We'll want to always be working in WSL2, so we're going to say WSL set the default version to, oops, do that again. So now WSL is ready, but we have no instances installed. So let's find out what instances are available. All right, there's our list of what's available. I'm going to go ahead and install Ubuntu 2204. I'm using Ubuntu because it uses systemd, and that's going to be relevant later. And again, that's going to take a couple minutes. So now we're going to create our user. So now our Ubuntu instance is installed and ready to be used. Here we can see the IP address that we've been assigned and the internal network that was created. And if we take a look at our primary route, see there is our gateway, and here is our internal network, just as I described. If we take a look at our networking, we can see that the vEthernet WSL, the Hyper-V virtual adapter, has been added as a gateway for the internal network. To use bridged networking, we need a virtual adapter configured as a bridge rather than a switch. In this case, I want to bridge the Ethernet card adapter my host is currently using. You can create a bridged connection in the Windows UI, but I've never been able to make it work for WSL, and it often results in an error when I try. What's more, the virtual adapter created by WSL disappears when the host reboots and won't appear again until WSL starts. So to make this configuration work, we need to install Hyper-V. We're going to bring up Features, and simply install Hyper-V. And now we'll reboot again. Okay, so now Hyper-V is installed. So we're going to bring up the Hyper-V Manager and look at the Virtual Switch Manager. Now you have here a default switch. We can't do anything to that one, so we're going to create a new virtual switch. It's going to be an external switch. We're going to call it WSL Bridge. It'll be an external network to my Ethernet card. So now when we look at our network connections, you can see two new adapters, the default switch created by Hyper-V and the WSL bridge that we just created. Now we need to create our global WSL config file. Our networking mode is set to bridged. Our switch is WSL bridge. DHCP, we're going to get our IP address from the router. IPv6 doesn't matter in my case because I don't use it on my network. If you're using Notepad, you need to change this to all files or it's going to drop the .txt extension on the end of the file. So we're going to save this. And user profile.wsl config, which is our global configuration file for WSL. Now both the host and our WSL instance will be using the bridged adapter. Here is the host network configuration. And here is the WSL guest configuration. Same network, same gateway, but different IP addresses. Our name server and default domain were provided by the DHCP server, and the resolver configuration file was created by WSL. We can get out to the internet and we can get to other devices on the local network. We can get to the WSL guest by IP address from other devices on the LAN. But the host name will only get us to the host. We can set a new host name on the guest in the local configuration file for WSL. We'll add the network section and a unique host name. Now let's restart WSL. And we can see that the host name on the guest has been changed. But when we try to ping the guest by name, it doesn't work. WSL does not register the host name with the name server. But we can fix that by using systemd to establish the network connection. Systemd is supported by the latest WSL version and most modern Linux distros, including Ubuntu. This error message sometimes shows up the first time you start WSL. I haven't found any problems with it, and systemd is running just fine. Okay, first we have to create the systemd network configuration file. This will configure our primary Ethernet adapter to get its configuration from DHCP. Now we have to modify the local WSL configuration file to stop WSL from creating the resolver configuration file. Now we'll link the resolver config file to the file created by systemd. And finally, we'll enable and start the systemd networking service. Now the WSL guest can be reached by name from anywhere on the LAN. And there you have it. That's how you install WSL2 and a Linux guest on Windows 10 with bridge networking. I hope you found this helpful, and I'll see you again next time.